The feast was loud, filled with laughter, wine, and the clatter of golden cups. King Robert Baratheon, drunk as always, sat at the head of the long table, roaring with laughter at some crude joke. Beside him, Queen Cersei kept her usual cold expression, her green eyes sharp and watching everything. But Tyrion Lannister wasn't watching the king or the queen. His eyes were fixed on Sansa Stark, the sweet northern girl with auburn hair and wide blue eyes. Tyrion had been in the capital long enough to know that something was wrong. Too many whispers in the Red Keep, Varys moving like a shadow, Littlefinger always smiling too much. And worst of all, Cersei spending more and more time with Jaime behind locked doors. Tyrion wasn't a hero. He drank too much, gambled even more, and wasn't exactly loved. But he had one gift that made him dangerous, his mind. And right now, his mind told him one thing. Someone was planning to kill King Robert. It wasn't hard to figure out who. Cersei had grown tired of her husband. Everyone knew she hated him. But Tyrion suspected this time it wasn't just hate, it was ambition. She wanted the throne, for herself or for her son Joffrey, who Tyrion strongly suspected wasn't Robert's son at all. But Tyrion couldn't prove it, not yet. And that's where Sansa came in. She was innocent, naive, but she had something no one else had, access. She was betrothed to Joffrey, and Cersei trusted her like a tool, thinking she was just a silly girl dreaming of princes. Tyrion saw something else. He saw someone who could listen, observe, and maybe, just maybe, help him stop what was coming. So after the feast, when the hall had emptied and the wine had turned to sour breath, Tyrion found Sansa walking alone in the garden, staring up at the moonlight like it held the answers to her dreams. He limped over, wine in hand, and gave a small nod. Lady Stark. She looked startled, curtsied quickly. Lord Tyrion. No need for titles. I'm just a dwarf in the garden tonight. He smirked, but his voice was serious. Do you have a moment? Sansa hesitated. She'd been warned about Tyrion, by her scepter, by her mother, even by her gut. But something in his tone was different tonight. Not playful, not mocking. Yes, she said softly. They walked slowly, the cool air brushing against their skin. Tyrion didn't waste time. I need to ask you something, Sansa. Something important. Do you trust Queen Cersei? Sansa looked confused. She's kind to me. She tells me how to behave, how to act like a lady. She says I'll be queen one day. Tyrion sighed. Yes, she's very good at saying things people want to hear, but let me ask you this. Have you ever heard her speaking in whispers? Has she ever sent you away suddenly when someone comes into the room? Sansa thought about it. Yes, a few times, especially when Lord Varys or Lord Baelish visits. She always tells me to go play with Septa Mordain or go back to my chambers. Tyrion nodded slowly. That was enough to confirm it. Cersei was hiding something, and Sansa was his way in. He leaned closer, dropping his voice. Sansa, I need your help, and I know you don't owe me anything. I'm a Lannister. You're a Stark. Our families don't exactly send each other gifts. She stayed quiet, her hands fidgeting in front of her. But you love your father, don't you? Tyrion said softly. And you want to protect him. Her eyes widened. Yes, of course. Then listen carefully. If the king dies, your father will be blamed. They'll call it treason. Cersei will make sure of it. And Joffrey. He won't protect your family. He'll destroy it. But if we act now, if we stop this plan before it happens, we can save your father. Save King Robert. Maybe even save the realm. Sansa looked pale now, as if the garden had grown colder. What do you want me to do? She asked. Tyrion's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. Just listen, watch, and tell me everything you hear in the Queen's chambers, every whisper, every letter. every order. If we're going to stop a queen from killing her king, we'll need all the secrets you can find." Sansa hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Good girl," Tyrion said, raising his wine. "Winterfell taught you well." And just like that, the game had changed. The next morning, the Red Keep buzzed with its usual noise, clinking armor, echoing voices, and servants rushing down the stone corridors with baskets of fruit and fresh-baked bread. But Sansa Stark walked through it all like a ghost. Her mind was spinning, tangled with thoughts she didn't know how to handle. She had agreed to spy on the Queen, a queen who trusted her, a queen who could have her killed with a whisper. But Tyrion's words haunted her. "If the king dies, your father will be blamed." That was the part she couldn't ignore. Whatever fear she had for Cersei, it was nothing compared to the fear of seeing her father's head on a spike. So she walked straight into the lion's den, into the Queen's solar, her face calm, her voice polite. "Your Grace, you asked for me." Cersei sat by the window, her golden hair braided like a crown, her fingers playing with a glass of wine, even though it wasn't yet noon. "Yes, sweet girl, come sit. I wanted to talk to you about your future." Her smile was soft, but her eyes held that cold, calculating gleam. Sansa sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "Your betrothal to Joffrey is the most important match in the realm," Cersei said smoothly. "You must always be mindful of what you say and do. The court is full of eyes, full of snakes." Sansa nodded, though she felt a twisting in her stomach. The Queen's words sounded like advice, but they were also a warning. Then something unexpected happened. Cersei leaned in, voice low. "Do not trust my brother Tyrion. He may act like a fool, but he's clever, far more than he lets on. He plays games, always looking for ways to twist people to his advantage." Sansa's breath caught. She wasn't sure what to say. The Queen was reading too close to the truth already. "I understand, Your Grace," she said carefully. Cersei studied her. "Good. I'm glad you're not as naive as some might think." After Sansa left, she found her heart pounding. But the conversation was more valuable than she expected. Cersei knew Tyrion was onto something. That meant his fears were real. Later that day, Tyrion found her again, this time in the Godswood, the only quiet place left in the castle. "Well?" he asked, lowering his voice. "What did she say?" "She warned me about you," Sansa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyrion chuckled. "Of course she did. My dear sister sees threats in her own reflection. She told me not to trust you." "Good advice," he said with a grin. "But in this case, I suggest you ignore it." He grew serious again. "Did she say anything about the king?" Sansa hesitated. "No, not directly, but she called my match to Joffrey the most important in the realm. She said the court was full of snakes." Tyrion rubbed his chin. "Snakes usually bite when no one's looking. She's planning something soon. I can feel it." Sansa frowned. "What are we going to do?" "I've already sent word to someone I trust," Tyrion said. "Bronn. He'll keep an eye on Robert, even if Robert is too drunk to notice." "But how do we stop the Queen?" Sansa asked. Tyrion looked at her, and for a moment there was no humor in his face at all. "We don't stop the Queen. We outplay her." That night, Sansa returned to the Queen's chambers, pretending to ask about dresses and embroidery. She stayed quiet and polite, the perfect little lady, while the Queen and two of her handmaids whispered behind a curtain. She couldn't hear much, but she did catch a name: Lancel. The next morning, she told Tyrion. "Lancel," he repeated. "My cousin, weak-chinned, dumb as a goat. What would she want with him?" Then it hit him. She's using him to get to the king. Wine. The king drinks like a fish, and Lancel serves him. Tyrion's jaw tightened. She's poisoning him. He stood up, suddenly alert. We don't have much time." Sansa stood too, confused and scared. "What are you going to do?" He gave her a grim smile. "I'm going to save a king and ruin a queen." And with that, Tyrion Lannister limped off, faster than she'd ever seen him move. The game had turned deadly. The sun hung low over King's Landing, casting long golden shadows across the stone walls of the Red Keep. But there was nothing warm about what was coming. Tyrion Lannister paced in his chambers, his goblet of wine untouched, a rare sight. He'd sent Bronn to watch Lancel like a hawk, and now he waited, nerves alive under his skin like crawling ants. There was no more doubt in his mind. Cersei was killing Robert, slow and quiet, cup by poison cup, and no one would suspect her. Everyone thought Robert was just drinking himself into the grave. But Tyrion knew better. He needed proof. He needed a way to catch Cersei's hand in the act and stop it before the next poisoned cup did its work. A knock came, 3 sharp taps. Bronn slipped inside, dirty as usual, but grinning. "You were right," he said. "Lancel gave the king his wine just now, looked nervous, too nervous for a simple errand." Tyrion narrowed his eyes. "Did he drink it?" "Aye. A full goblet." Went down laughing, slapping Lancel on the back. Poor boy nearly pissed himself. Tyrion swore under his breath. "We're running out of time." He turned to his writing desk and began scrawling a message in his quick, jagged hand. The note was for Sir Barristan Selmy, one of the few men in the Red Keep who still held true honor. If anyone could reach the king and question the servants without raising suspicion, it was him. He sealed the note with his personal sigil, a gold lion pawing a book, and handed it to Bronn. "Get this to Selmy, quietly. If anyone asks, you're delivering gambling debts." Bronn snorted. "Aren't I always?" Meanwhile, Sansa sat in her chambers, staring at her reflection. Her hands were cold, trembling slightly. She had done what Tyrion asked. She had spied on the queen, whispered the name Lancel at the risk of her life. But now she wondered, what if this failed? What if her part in this came to light? She had seen how Queen Cersei looked at traitors. She had heard the stories. Then the door opened. It was Tyrion himself, for once not hiding behind his usual smirk. "We have one chance," he said quietly. "Tonight." "Tonight." Sansa stood. "What's happening?" "Cersei's arranged for Robert to go on a hunt tomorrow. She's planning to finish the job in the woods. No court, no witnesses, just Lancel, a wineskin, and a boar." Sansa felt sick. "We stop her tonight," Tyrion said, "or your father dies a traitor's death." Sansa hesitated. "How?" "I need you to deliver a message to the Queen. You'll tell her Robert is changing his plans. Say he's decided not to go hunting, that he's staying in the castle to recover. That'll scare her. She'll act rashly. But that's not true. I know. It's bait. And while she's panicking, I'll confront Lancel. If he talks, and he will talk, then we take it straight to Robert. The king may be a drunk, but he won't ignore proof of treason from his own wife." Sansa swallowed hard. "If she finds out I lied..." "She won't. Not if we move quickly." That night, Sansa went to Cersei's chambers, her stomach in knots. She repeated Tyrion's lie carefully, her voice innocent, her face calm. Cersei stared at her a moment, eyes narrowed. "He's not going." "No, Your Grace," Sansa said. "He's too tired. He said the wine last night made his stomach turn." For a heartbeat, Cersei's mask cracked. Just a flicker of panic. Then it vanished behind her cold smile. "Thank you, sweet girl," she said. "Go and rest. You've been such a help." Sansa fled the room, heart pounding. Meanwhile, in the wine cellars below the Red Keep, Tyrion found Lancel pouring from a cask, a sheen of sweat on his brow. Cousin, Tyrion said lightly, what vintage are we poisoning the king with tonight? Lancel dropped the cup, eyes wide. I. I. I don't know what you mean, spare me. I know everything, so the only question is, do you want Robert to find out from me or from your own snivelling lips? I didn't know. Lancel burst out. She said it was just to calm him, to help him sleep. Of course she did, Tyrion said coldly, and now you're part of a royal assassination, unless you tell the king everything. Tonight. I'll do it, Lancel said, voice shaking. Just don't let her kill me. Tyrion smiled. Oh, I won't. I'll let the king decide. And as the moon rose over King's Landing, the Game of Thrones was no longer just a game. It was war. Tyrion stood just outside the king's private chambers, his heart thudding harder than it had in years. He'd faced battles, insults, near death more times than he could count, but nothing had ever felt quite like this. Because tonight he wasn't gambling with gold or glory, he was gambling with a king's life. With a breath, he nodded to Sir Barristan Selmy, who had agreed to meet him at this cursed hour. The old knight read the letter Tyrion had sent him earlier, twice, before giving the dwarf a long, hard look. If you're lying, Lord Tyrion, I'm not, Tyrion said. And if I were, I'd be clever enough to lie about something less dangerous than accusing the Queen of poisoning the king. Selmy gave a small nod, then stepped forward and knocked on the king's door. Inside, Robert Baratheon groaned like a bear waking from hibernation. What in the seven hells is this? It's Sir Barristan, your grace, the knight said. I bring urgent news. The door opened slowly. Robert stood shirtless, half drunk, with a heavy goblet of wine in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot, but alert. Speak, or get out. Tyrion stepped in beside Selmy. Your grace, what I say now must remain between us, for your safety. Robert frowned. If this is about your sister's whining again, it's about your wine, Tyrion cut in. You're being poisoned. The room fell silent. Robert stared at him, then let out a bark of laughter. You think I'm that easy to kill. I've drunk more than half the realm. Poison isn't about quantity, Tyrion said calmly. It's about patience, and the poison is slow, tasteless. It makes you tired, weak. Your hunts have become fewer, your sleep longer. You've lost strength. Haven't you noticed? Robert's hand tightened around his cup. Who? He asked, after a pause, voice flat. Tyrion looked him in the eye. Your cupbearer, Lancel Lannister, on your queen's orders. Robert didn't say a word. He turned slowly and walked to his table, slamming the goblet down. Get Lancel. Now. Selmy left immediately. Tyrion stood still, watching the king's face. You sure of this? Robert muttered. I confronted Lancel. He confessed. He thought the poison was just a calming tonic. But it's weakened you, little by little, so that when you went on your next hunt, you wouldn't come back. Robert's face twisted. Cersei. For a moment he looked like the Robert of old, furious, wild, full of fire. She tried to kill me, he said quietly. My own damn wife. Tyrion remained silent. Selmy returned, dragging a pail and shaking Lancel behind him. The boy was trembling like a leaf, sweat dripping from his temple. Tell him, Tyrion said simply. I didn't mean to, Lancel stammered. She said it was just to help him rest. I didn't know it would, please, I didn't know. Robert listened, unmoving. Then, with a roar, he lunged forward and grabbed Lancel by the collar, lifting him clean off the ground and slamming him into the wall. You little worm, he bellowed. You put poison in the cup of a king? Lancel sobbed. She said you'd never notice. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Robert dropped him like a sack of grain. The boy crumpled to the floor, whimpering. "Throw him in the black cells," Robert growled. Selmy nodded and dragged Lancel away, while Robert turned back to Tyrion. "I owe you," he said, "a debt I never thought I'd have to say to a Lannister." Tyrion inclined his head. "Your grace is generous." Robert poured himself a fresh cup of wine, sniffed it, then dumped the whole thing out onto the floor. "Poisoned by my own wife," he muttered. "7 hells. I should have killed her years ago." Tyrion hesitated, then spoke. "If I may advise, the Queen still has power, friends, allies. If you act now, you can stop her, but wait too long, and she'll bury the truth before you can blink." Robert nodded slowly. "You're right. Tomorrow I'll have her arrested. Her and anyone tied to this." "You'll need proof," Tyrion said. "Public proof, not just a boy's confession." Robert gave him a savage grin. "Then we'll give the people a show." That night, Cersei Lannister slept soundly in her golden bed, dreaming of a hunt that would end her husband's reign. But morning would bring a storm she could never outrun, and Tyrion, for the first time in his life, had just outplayed the Queen. The next morning dawned cold and grey, a sky full of clouds hanging over King's Landing like a warning. The city had no idea what was about to happen. Inside the Red Keep, whispers moved faster than footsteps, servants running with pale faces and hushed voices. In the great hall, a crowd gathered. Lords, knights, noble ladies, and even some foreign envoys had been summoned by royal decree. The court was not used to morning announcements. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it. Yet no one spoke the words out loud. Queen Cersei entered, flanked by Sir Jaime and 2 of her loyal guards. She wore green velvet, jewels at her throat, and the confidence of someone who believed she owned the very stones beneath her feet. Her eyes swept the room, landing on Tyrion, who stood near the throne. He offered her a polite nod, his face unreadable. She didn't like that. Tyrion was always smirking, always mocking. This silence was dangerous. Then Robert Baratheon entered. He didn't stumble, he didn't reek of wine. He wore his old black leathers, the crowned stag across his chest. His face looked tired, but awake, and angry, like the Robert of old, the king who had smashed Rhaegar on the Trident and taken a crown by force. The hall fell silent. Cersei frowned. "Robert, what is this?" she asked, keeping her voice sweet. Robert didn't answer. Instead, he raised a hand, and the doors to the hall opened once more. Lancel Lannister was dragged in, shackled, bruised, and shaking. Cersei's eyes widened, only for a second, but Tyrion saw it, and so did Robert. "This boy," Robert said, his voice echoing through the hall, "has served in my household as a cupbearer. Loyal, quiet, obedient." He turned slowly, facing the crowd. He was also used by others, manipulated, made to serve poison in the king's own cup. A collective gasp swept the chamber. Poison. Lord Renly whispered behind his hand. Cersei stepped forward. "Robert, this is absurd. He's a boy. He doesn't know what he's saying." "He confessed," Robert cut her off sharply. "In front of Sir Barristan, in front of Tyrion. He named the one who gave him the order." Cersei's mouth twitched. "You would believe a terrified child or your own wife?" Robert's voice dropped. "He named you, Cersei." The hall erupted in murmurs. Cersei's mask shattered. "You drunken fool," she snapped. "You believe that little monster's lies. Tyrion, that twisted demon, is turning you against your family, against me." Robert moved forward, his voice like thunder. "It wasn't Tyrion's poison in my cup. It was yours." For the first time in years, the Queen looked afraid. Jaime stepped forward, hand on his sword. "You'll watch how you speak to the Queen." But Robert didn't flinch. "The Queen, no," Robert spat. "The traitor. With a wave of his hand, gold cloaks moved in. Not the ones loyal to Cersei. Robert had ordered the switch during the night. These guards belonged to Janos Slint, newly rewarded, freshly bribed. Their loyalty was for sale, and today Robert had paid. "Cersei Lannister," Robert said, his voice calm but deadly, "you are hereby charged with treason against the crown. You will be confined to your chambers until trial. If you resist, you die." Cersei looked at Tyrion then, her eyes full of rage. "You did this!" Tyrion tilted his head. "I simply stopped a murder. You think you've won. You think the game ends here." "No," Tyrion replied. "But today the game is mine." Cersei was dragged out screaming about her children, her power, her blood. Jaime was held back by 4 guards. He didn't move. Not yet. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then Robert turned to the crowd. "Let this be a warning," he said. "The crown is not blind, it is not deaf, and it will not be poisoned." Tyrion stepped forward, whispering, "Now you must act quickly. Varys, Pycelle, even Littlefinger, they'll shift sides like snakes in the grass. They'll wait to see who bleeds first." Robert nodded grimly. "Then I'll bleed them all before they get the chance." As the hall emptied, Sansa Stark stood near a pillar, shaken to her core. She had watched her future mother-in-law be dragged away in chains. She had watched her betrothed, Joffrey, turn pale and silent. She looked at Tyrion as he passed. "You saved him," she said softly. Tyrion paused. "I saved more than him, little dove. I saved your father too. But what happens now?" Tyrion's eyes turned cold. "Now?" Tyrion's eyes turned cold. "Now? Now we see how far a lion can fall and who gets crushed beneath him." The Red Keep had never been quieter, and yet the silence felt more dangerous than any war horn. After Queen Cersei's arrest, the palace seemed to breathe differently. Servants moved carefully, avoiding eye contact. Courtiers whispered behind curtains, pretending to offer congratulations to the king while already calculating who to betray next. Fear had replaced luxury in every corner of the royal halls. Tyrion Lannister knew this wasn't victory. It was just the opening move of a bloodier game. He sat in his chamber, firelight dancing off his wine cup. He hadn't slept, and not because of fear, but because he knew Cersei too well. She wouldn't go down without burning everything behind her. A knock came. Lord Varys entered, soft-footed and smiling too widely. "Lord Tyrion," the spider said silkily, "you stirred quite the nest of vipers." Tyrion raised his cup. "Not stirred, Varys. Exposed." "Indeed." The queen arrested, her cousin weeping in chains, and the king, for once, not too drunk to swing a sword. Quite the morning. Tyrion leaned forward. "I know how you play, Varys. You survive storms by switching sides just before they hit. So tell me, whose side are you on now?" Varys gave a faint chuckle. "Why, the realms, of course. The realm doesn't pay bribes or slit throats," Tyrion said coldly. "The queen has allies. She's made deals behind closed doors, old ones and new. If you want to keep that powdered head on your shoulders, you'll help me break them." Varys's smile dimmed. "You're right. She's already sent a raven to Lord Tywin." Tyrion froze. "Of course she had. She's calling father to war," he muttered. "If Tywin marches on the capital, he won't come to rescue her. He'll come to destroy whoever humiliated House Lannister." Varys nodded. "Your father loves few things, but power and pride are among them." Tyrion stood. "Then we'll need to act first." Meanwhile, Sansa Stark sat quietly in the gardens, her face pale. She hadn't spoken to Joffrey since the Queen's arrest. He hadn't come to see her. He hadn't even asked for her. She'd expected tears from him, rage, shouts, but instead, silence. And that silence scared her more. Then she heard his voice behind her. Sansa. She turned. Joffrey stood in his fine red tunic, 2 Kingsguard behind him. He looked smaller now, unsure, but his eyes held something colder than she remembered. "I suppose you're happy," he said bitterly. "My mother. In chains." Sansa stood, trying to find words. "I didn't want this to happen. I only told Lord Tyrion what I heard. I didn't know it would." "She's still my mother," Joffrey snapped, "and you're still my future queen." Sansa flinched. "I can protect you, Sansa," Joffrey said, stepping closer, "but you'll have to prove your loyalty, starting now." "How?" Joffrey's smile returned, sharp and cruel. "When my grandfather arrives, I want you to speak well of me. Tell Lord Tywin I've been strong, that I didn't break, that I'm ready to rule." Sansa stared at him. "You mean—" "Lie." He leaned closer. "You're good at pretending, aren't you? Do it again. Or next time someone gets dragged in chains. It might be your father." She nodded stiffly. "Yes, my prince." He walked away without another word. At the same time, deep beneath the Red Keep, Tyrion met with Ser Barristan and Bronn. A plan was forming, and it was dangerous. "We need to move Cersei," Tyrion said. "She's too close. If she has guards loyal to her still hidden in the castle, she might try to escape. Or worse, stage something loud and ugly." Ser Barristan nodded. "Where do you want her taken?" "Dragonstone," Tyrion said, "under heavy guard. She can wait there for her trial. No ravens, no visitors, and if she tries to bribe anyone, cut off her tongue." Barristan looked uneasy, but he agreed. That night, under heavy moonlight, Cersei Lannister was dragged from her chambers, still proud, still silent. She didn't weep, didn't scream. She simply turned to Tyrion and said one thing: "You think you've won, but you've only given father a reason to burn this city." Tyrion stared at her, face unreadable. "Let him try." And as she was taken away, Tyrion felt a chill in his bones, not from her words, but from the truth in them. The lioness was in chains, but the lion himself was coming, and Tywin Lannister would bring fire with him. 3 days later, the banners of House Lannister appeared on the horizon, crimson and gold, flapping like a threat in the cold sea wind. The procession thundered toward King's Landing with calculated grandeur, a sea of red cloaks and steel, soldiers marching in perfect rhythm. It wasn't a rescue mission. It was a warning. Tywin Lannister had arrived. From the high walls of the Red Keep, Tyrion watched the approach. His face tight. He had faced many things: cruelty, mockery, near death. But never before had he stood as the man who publicly humiliated his own blood in front of half the realm. And now that blood came on horseback, armored, furious, and unrelenting. "He won't listen," Tyrion muttered to himself. "He never does." Sansa stood quietly beside him, watching the golden army pour into the city gates. "Will he kill you?" she asked softly. Tyrion smiled faintly. "Depends how insulted he feels. Knowing father, he's already measured my coffin and picked out the stone." The throne room was prepared like a battlefield. Robert Baratheon sat at the Iron Throne, fingers tapping the armrest impatiently. Ser Barristan stood beside him, still loyal. Tyrion was there too, dressed simply, no jewelry, no armor, just words and truth for weapons. Then the doors opened. Tywin Lannister entered like a storm wrapped in lion's skin. He wore no expression. His golden armor gleamed, his cloak dragged behind him like royalty. And when he saw Tyrion, he didn't blink. "My king," Tywin said with a shallow bow, "you summoned me." Robert stood. "Your daughter tried to murder me. Your cousin confessed to poisoning my wine, and your son uncovered it." Tywin's eyes flicked to Tyrion for the first time. There was no pride in them, only calculation. "Lord Tyrion," he said, My clever boy. Tyrion returned the stare. I did what you never dared. I saved the crown from your daughter's ambition. Robert grunted. Your family eats itself, Tywin, but I won't be the meal. Nor should you be, Tywin said smoothly. I do not defend what my daughter did. If she is guilty, she must answer for it. You knew, Tyrion cut in. That turned heads. You knew she hated him, that she plotted, that she used Lancel. Tywin's face stayed perfectly still. I knew she had. Frustrations, he said carefully, but murder? Even I wouldn't accuse my blood of that without proof. We have the proof, Tyrion said, voice rising. Lancel confessed, in front of witnesses, and your daughter hasn't denied it. Robert looked between them. Enough talking. I need to know where your loyalties lie, Tywin. Tywin stepped forward, with the realm, with order, with stability. And if I execute your daughter, Robert asked. A pause. I will not raise a blade against the king, Tywin said coldly. But I will not pretend this doesn't shame my house, and it will not be forgotten. Robert grinned. Good, because I've decided her fate. Tyrion tensed. Exile, Robert announced. To Dragonstone for the rest of her days. She'll live, but she'll rot in stone and salt. And your house will prove its loyalty by staying out of my sight for the next 10 years. Tywin's jaw tightened, but he bowed. As the king commands. Robert turned and left the room. Tyrion expected Tywin to follow. Instead, his father stepped toward him. You made a spectacle of your own house, Tywin said in a low voice. In front of lords and small folk, you dared to shame a lion in the open. I saved a king, Tyrion replied. That used to matter. Tywin's eyes darkened. You think yourself clever, boy, but kings die. The realm forgets, and family remembers. With that, he turned and left the throne room, his red cloak trailing behind like blood on stone. Later that night, Tyrion found a letter slipped beneath his door. It was unsigned, but the seal was Lannister gold. I will not strike you in court. I will not raise my voice, but you are no longer a son of mine. You are the shame I no longer claim. Tyrion stared at the letter for a long time before tossing it into the fire. The flames curled it into ash without mercy. In the shadows of the corridor, Sansa watched him. Are you all right? She asked. Tyrion gave her a bitter smile. No, but I'm alive, and in this family, that's victory enough. The sky over King's Landing was streaked with fire-orange clouds as the sun began to set, painting the city in gold and blood, a fitting end to a day that had changed the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. Inside the Red Keep, the halls were quiet, but not peaceful. Cersei was gone, exiled, chained to Dragonstone. Tywin had returned to his encampment beyond the city walls, licking his wounds in silence. Joffrey, once so smug, now walked with his head low, avoiding the court, his crown more of a burden than a prize. And Tyrion Lannister, the imp, the shame of his family, had become something no one expected, the king's most trusted advisor. Robert sat on the Iron Throne, soberer than he'd been in years. The attempted poisoning had sobered more than his body, it had shaken his soul. He kept Tyrion near now, listened to him, trusted his counsel. It was a strange alliance, built not on friendship, but survival. They were both men who had been betrayed by those closest to them. That, more than blood, bound them. Tyrion knew something the king didn't. This wasn't over. One night, as Tyrion walked the torchlit corridors alone, a whisper came from the shadows. Lord Tyrion. He turned to find Varys, his smooth, bald head gleaming faintly in the torchlight. What is it now? Tyrion sighed. Another spider spinning in another corner. Varys smiled thinly. You've won a great battle, but not the war. I'm quite aware, Tyrion said, voice sharp. Tywin will bide his time. He'll find another way to poison the crown without a cup. Indeed, Varys replied. And there's another matter. Something you may not see. Tyrion raised a brow. Enlighten me. Varys stepped closer. The queen may be gone, but her children remain. Tyrion stiffened. Joffrey is still in line for the throne, Varys continued softly. Tommen and Myrcella still bear the Lannister name. And all three are not Baratheons. Tyrion's heart pounded. Are you saying I should tell Robert? I'm saying, Varys whispered, that the truth is a sword, and if you don't swing it, someone else will. Tyrion said nothing. He walked away without another word, but his mind was racing. Later that night, he stood before Robert's chambers, wine in hand, unsure for once what to do. This truth, the truth about Cersei's children, could destroy everything, but it could also protect the realm. Because if Joffrey ever sat the Iron Throne, there would be no realm left to protect. He knocked. Robert opened the door himself. His face was warm, older than ever, but his eyes were sharp now. He waved Tyrion in. What is it now, imp? The king grunted, pouring them both a drink. Tyrion took the cup, but didn't sip. I need to tell you something that would change everything, again. Robert looked up, frowning. It's about your children, Tyrion said, the ones Cersei gave you. Robert narrowed his eyes. What about them? Tyrion's voice was quiet. They're not yours. The words hung there like a blade suspended in air. What did you say? Robert whispered, his voice dangerous. I said, they're not yours. They're Jaime's. All three of them. Robert went still. He didn't shout, he didn't throw the cup, he just sat down heavily and stared into the fire. I always knew, he muttered. Somewhere deep down, I knew. Tyrion said nothing. The silence was enough. Robert looked at him, eyes hollow. What do I do, Tyrion? Kill them all? Put a sword through a child? No, Tyrion said. But you must name a new heir, one with your blood. You have bastards, too many to count. Pick one, raise him right, and send the false prince far from the throne. Robert nodded slowly, and Joffrey, Tyrion took a long drink. He may not survive the truth. He's already cracking. When Tyrion left the room, he felt something deep inside him shift. He had just unseated the next king. 2 days later, a royal decree was read in the Great Hall. By order of King Robert Baratheon, Prince Joffrey is stripped of his title and inheritance. A new heir shall be named, of true Baratheon blood. The hall erupted. Joffrey screamed in rage, fought the guards, had to be dragged away like a mad dog. Tommen and Myrcella were taken quietly from the court, sent to foster far from the capital, and Tyrion stood beside the Iron Throne and watched it all unfold. The destruction of his sister's legacy, the crumbling of a lie that had ruled the realm for years. He had burned his family's name to save a king, and in doing so had become the most dangerous man in Westeros.